Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me today for Hub International's Ready for Tomorrow Virtual Summit. My name is Mary Beth Anderson. I am an Assistant Vice President on the Risk Services team for Hub International. Today's presentation is about building resilience and preparing for compound disasters. We will cover where we are in response, where we need to go, and how to get there. The vast majority of businesses were not prepared for the magnitude of this pandemic. That is why it's important to emphasize the need to be proactive instead of reactive when it comes to disasters. Businesses can increase their resilience by preparing now for other potential crises, such as flooding, hurricanes, or wildfires that could occur while we are already dealing with COVID-19. We all have been in response mode for the last few months. I recently looked back at my emails and found the first correspondence about coronavirus in late January. It's hard to believe that it was almost 5 months ago. During those early days, it seemed like the impact to the US and Canada would be minimal. However, by the beginning of March, COVID-19 had made its way into our daily vocabulary. Businesses that had business continuity plans took very deliberate actions. Other businesses that didn't have plans struggled. During the initial phase of response, the majority of businesses settled into 3 categories. The first category is non-essential businesses that had shut down completely as states mandated stay-at-home orders. For some of those businesses, this situation offered an opportunity to change their business model to fit in the current situation. Examples are restaurants that created curbside pickup, grocery stores that utilized employees to shop, allowing customers to pick up their order, and companies like Instacart that delivered right to their door. In the second category, most essential businesses experienced a huge increase in their workload. Safety professionals were busy understanding ever-changing PPE requirements, and companies like Amazon held non-essential orders, and the deliveries also extended to 5 days and beyond. The third category had businesses transition employees to work from home to maintain as close to normal business operations as possible. Although many of these businesses were challenged with equipment and IT issues, many of these companies are taking a hard look at whether going back to traditional workplace still makes sense. Recently, Twitter announced that they were offering most of their workforce the ability to continue to work from home indefinitely, while other companies such as Facebook have announced return to work won't be considered until 2021. No matter where your business falls in under each of these categories, every situation has been stressful to keep up with all of the guidelines of PPE, sanitization, and infection prevention. There are many lessons learned from this initial response phase that each one of us should be documenting now that can guide us as we continue to maneuver through the pandemic. As you support your company to make decisions, it is important to document why the decisions were made. The documentation can be referred to later and can provide a background of whether those decisions were beneficial or not. For the most part, we have settled into our new normal because we know that COVID-19 will be around for a while. The best question to ask is, so what's next? Being strategic will help businesses try to anticipate a variety of scenarios over the longer term and how those scenarios may play out. Some locations have already ended stay-at-home orders and businesses are beginning to open, while other locations, such as Illinois, have introduced a multi-phased approach to reopen based on infection rate data. Regardless, the best approach for businesses to make it through the long haul is to use strategic thinking, adjust business operations, and to minimize expenses. When states set a date to open, it's just a moment in time. COVID-19 will not magically disappear on that date. The only way for businesses to navigate through this time is to be strategic based on the risk assessments of their own business operations. These discussions provide guidance to determine appropriate actions to keep employees safe and operations running smoothly. It also allows business leaders to discuss their current business operations and identify alternatives, which may decrease risk to personnel and increase efficiency. Being strategic also helps to identify ways to minimize expenses, which help to deflect a decrease in profit. For those of us who travel often for work, while we have all been at home, there is a cost savings for travel. That is just one of the examples that is an expense reduction. Through our current situation, many of us have found alternative ways to engage with each other or clients via video conferencing or virtual project work. This change has allowed us to rethink our personal engagements in the future, which will all decrease the expense of travel. While in the midst of the pandemic, it is easy to focus on what is going on right now. We have all been bombarded with COVID-19 information that we can't keep up with. Being strategic will allow businesses to look further out to discuss potential implications that the pandemic will have on employees and operations later this summer and through the end of the year or longer. Planning 30 days, 60 days, 90 days and beyond to anticipate challenges before they occur will ensure that your organization is better prepared. These types of discussions will provide a level of control for the organization. It is important to note that the decisions made during these discussions may not be exactly right, but the ability to think ahead to set the course will help the organization be more flexible and decisive. Early on, I fielded many calls from clients who wanted help to develop a pandemic plan. I can assure you that once a crisis has occurred, that is the worst time to try to develop a plan. However, businesses can focus on what is the most important, which is their people and their products or service. From there, we can work together on finding out what is most important to keep employees safe and the business operating. Now that the immediate shock is over, I have been helping clients to think longer term, which helps direct the decisions that they make on the shorter term. Once you can cast your sights further out, it is easier to see what you need to do to get there. Return to work is a very important topic in every conversation right now. Keep in mind that when governments set an opening date, it does not mean that your business is required to start on the date if you're not ready. The guiding principle for your business is to figure out all of the preparations necessary to ensure the safety of your employees before employees come back to work and customers walk in your door. Note that the list of considerations to return to work on the left-hand side of the screen vary and are definitely not an exhaustive list. Use your knowledge of your business to add to the list. On the right-hand side of the screen, the graph describes our current situation managing the pandemic and is associated to the hierarchy of controls. Depending on our work situations, we need to consider the way that we have worked in the past to determine whether we can sustain that into the future. The key to reviewing all of the considerations applicable to your workplace is to make sure that every perspective is addressed. I recently spoke to clients in the arts and entertainment industry. They have many sites that have been closed since March, and they have many concerns regarding how to welcome back the public. They have concerns about the risk to volunteers, for which they depend on, as well as the patrons who might refuse to wear masks. But these discussions need to play out now so that they can figure out the best way for them to respond while they are closed and not have a situation present itself after they are open. Returning to work will be a challenge no matter what industry you work in, but we all need to get it right the first time. A compound disaster is when an additional disaster occurs on top of the one that is already going on. The challenge will be how businesses can perform regular preparedness activities if one of these events occur while we are managing through COVID-19. For example, if a town has to prepare for flooding, how will people be able to sandbag when it would jeopardize social distancing? Another example is if there is an event that requires evacuation, how will your employees be at greater risk of infection if they go to a shelter? How would that affect your other employees in business operations? These are the types of questions that your businesses should be discussing now. We are all at risk to experience a compound disaster at some point while we are managing through COVID-19. Our normal is no longer normal. You can imagine the impact that any one of these can have on top of an already strained business. That is why the message of being proactive is so very important. Wildfire season has already started, and it is anticipated that California, the Pacific Northwest, and Canada will have a higher than average wildfire season. Wildfires have already occurred this year. If your business is located in an area where wildfires occur, discussions need to define how the business will respond if employees are still working from home. Now that we are firmly into spring, the rains can cause flooding. The Mississippi River has already set flood longevity records from Louisiana to Iowa. And last year was the second wettest year in the lower 48 states for 125 years. Many are still having issues because of that. Within Canada, the downtown areas of Fort McMurray were hit with flooding from ice dams, causing lots of challenges. June 1st is around the corner, which is the start of hurricane season. The Colorado State University predicts that the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season to be more active than usual. The team anticipates 16 named storms, of which they predict 4 will likely become major hurricanes. Consider the implications for employees who live in areas where hurricanes occur. Local governments will be challenged to manage evacuation shelters due to social distancing. Their own resources will be stretched thin. Has your business considered who will be available to get your operations ready for hurricane landfall if your employees are still working from home? Earthquakes can happen with no warning. The damage created by earthquakes can initiate gas leaks in vulnerable areas, which can then turn into wildfires. Businesses should consider alternate methods to communicate to employees if power outages occur due to earthquake damage. Tornado season typically occurs through spring. Nashville recently sustained devastating tornadoes causing 24 fatalities and major damage. In addition, a few weeks back, Oklahoma reported at least 5 fatalities from tornadoes. Business operations will suffer when the homes of employees are heavily damaged, causing them to be displaced, which takes them away from work in a potentially already short-staffed workplace. If businesses experience any one or more of these types of events while managing through COVID-19, it will be devastating, especially if they are depending on key people who may be unavailable to perform critical responsibilities to help them manage through these events. Start preparing now. If your business has experienced any types of these events in the past, initiate discussions to be proactive. Utilizing an all-hazards approach when planning for potential compound disasters provides a broader perspective to manage and lessen the chance of business disruption. Next, I will talk about some other types of threats that could occur over the next few months while we are managing through the pandemic. When your business is contemplating other compound disasters that could affect your workplace, include the topic of security. Whether it be for layoffs or high-risk terminations, being prepared from a security perspective can prevent violence at work when employees return. Other situations that may be occurring that you are not aware of is domestic violence. If employees are living with an unreported domestic violence situation, the stress of being at home could escalate, which could then also transfer over into the workplace when business resumes. Engage your HR experts and communicate to your employees the benefits that may be available to them through EAP. While not every situation will escalate to the highest levels, patience is likely thin, and everyone is feeling the stress of COVID-19. Cyber risks should also be on the radar, regardless of being in a pandemic or not. However, as employees were sent home to work, cyber criminals were busy looking for every opportunity to find vulnerable victims. According to the FBI, cybercrimes doubled in March and April over last year. They also reported that phishing campaigns spiked, which attempt to get people to click on links that contain malware by offering information about COVID-19 or stimulus checks. Cyber criminals have blasted out smishing campaigns in areas where there is a high concentration of people being COVID-19 positive. The text messages state they were identified as being in contact with someone who was COVID-19 positive and to click on the link to schedule a test. Cyber criminals will use every opportunity available to try to get access to your confidential data and your technology. There has never been a time where we can be more influential to help our businesses to become proactive. This pandemic is an unknown, and it has changed the current environment of the way we work. According to FEMA, more than 40% of the businesses never reopen after a disaster. FEMA conducted the study after Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. While this isn't the same type of disaster, it certainly is one that will likely last long after a hurricane response. We need to do everything that we can to protect our employees, our business, and our brands. By identifying and making the best decisions for our employees and business, we can increase resilience. On the screen, you will see left of loss. If you can look at the center of the graph that you can see crisis, and this has the ability to play out over any type of crisis. During the pandemic, most businesses worked on the right of crisis. They didn't have a plan. They engaged their insurance at times if they had the appropriate insurance. They were scrambling around. Activities were very frenzied. And during this time is a lot of starts and stops. Oftentimes what I've seen with clients is the fact that they are almost paralyzed and unable to make decisions based on the fact that they have never discussed what they should do. So when they're in that situation, they do not have a plan and they are not sure of the decisions that they should actually make. However, businesses that do have business continuity plans, even if they're at the early stages of maturity of a plan, they have had discussions where they have outlined the potential risks of their business, and they have discussed the ways the business would react for a variety of different crises. Business disruption is business disruption. The only difference is that the actions that the business takes to ensure that the people that work for the company are safe, as well as the business operations continue on as close to normal as possible. When you're working to left of loss, it's important to note that it's much more calm, it's structured, it's very methodical. It's the ability to play out a variety of different solutions to potential problems. The key to this is making sure that those actions become documented and that all of those within your organization have been trained so that they understand what their roles are during a crisis. The key messages of the presentation are to be proactive, to define, actions to protect your employees, your business, and your brand, as well as be strategic to look further out to prevent the impact of compound disasters, which could jeopardize your business. As you continue managing through COVID-19, document what has been going well, what can be improved, and what resources you wish you had access to. When the dust settles, either take out your business continuity plan to review with your team and make the changes necessary that will ensure that your business is better prepared for the next crisis, or rally your team to begin the process of developing an all-hazards business continuity plan. Reach out to our risk services team at Hub International for resources, information, or support. We can facilitate a workshop for your senior leaders to identify and prioritize your risks, develop a business continuity plan, and help you walk down the road toward resilience. As Stephen Covey stated, if you don't choose to do it in leadership time up front, you do it in crisis management down the road. Thank you all for your time today. It has been a pleasure to share information that will hopefully help you manage through and beyond COVID-19. We at Hub are here to help. Thank you and stay safe.